Hello, this is Will Faber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a first submission by Carol of her horse Beaujolais. Beaujolais is a 20-year-old thoroughbred quarter horse cross. So starting out here on the lunge line, we can see this trot is very, very short. There's no real swing through his back. As we see behind the saddle there's quite a bit of a dip there. So we can see that the horse's back is very undeveloped. We can see how the belly is kind of hanging down a bit, distended out to the flanks, which tells you he's not really pulling up through his abdominal wall the way we'd like him to do. And we can see how very, very short this stride is. This horse almost looks a little sore in the feet. Now, we did have a look at the horse's saddle, and there were some issues there that may be causing part of the problem. But we've got to get this trot much more open and swinging. We can see that this isn't really even a trot. This is really kind of a joggy, kind of flat-footed thing that isn't really going anywhere and isn't enough to really get the horse to develop to the top line. As far as the adjustment goes on your side rein, that looks pretty good, and he's actually starting to stretch into it pretty good, but we've got to get it much more swing. You can just see how tiny this horse's steps are. So you may need to get a little closer to the horse so that you can tap him with the whip once or twice and get him to move a little more actively. Coming back to the walk, this walk looks pretty good. So at least you're on the right track here with the walk. He's starting to stretch into that pretty nicely as we come into the walk. Though it still even yet needs to be deeper than it is. So there he goes, and he releases there a little bit. So we can even see there, just as the horse releases that neck down a little bit, how the step at least becomes a little more rhythmic and starts to step through a little bit. But we can see how stiffly this horse steps behind, almost like his, like a man who ran 50 miles the day before. He looks very, very, very stiff through those hips. So we'd want to do a lot of walk work with this kind of horse, which is what you're doing here, which is very good. The horse is stretching down pretty well here in the walk, though once again it still needs to be a little deeper. So as you see him beginning to go down, if you see the horse's head and neck, the face of the horse beginning to come behind the vertical a little bit, that tells us that we need to start trying to lengthen the reins as well. So once he does starting to go down and out, try to give a little more length to that rein so that the horse can stretch his head and neck down and out further so that the side reins don't pull him back a little bit once he starts to stretch. That is, we don't want to see the face coming behind the vertical. So keep trying to encourage those side reins to get longer as you go there. So once again, we need much more swing in the horse's back during that trot work. So try to send him on a little more actively as you can. Once again, if you're just beginning this work and this horse has been quite stiff for some time, if it's 20 years old, you're just going to start this, so don't try to get it all in a day. It's not going to happen. It's a little bit at a time, but this is a good walk. Once again, we can see the more the horse stretches down in the walk, the more active the hind leg becomes. So a little better trot now, starting off in this direction. Though we still need to just ask the horse to be a little more active. Just got to swing a little bit more than this in order to develop. See, there's not really hardly any flexion in the hocks here at this point. Though it's starting to stretch down, and this is looking better than the trot did in the other direction. It's getting a little bit bigger here. And we can see even here, with as small as this trot is, as the horse does start to stretch a little bit, we start to see a little more flexion in the hocks. But once again, we can see when the horse comes by, and we can see the horse from a side view there, we can see how dipped the horse's back is. There's a good view of that to be able to see. So, but it doesn't matter whether the horse is 2 or whether the horse is 20. You can improve all of that. If the horse has never been trained correctly, the horse will still develop correctly if you do this. I've done this with this horses as old as 27 that were completely sway backed and been able to bring their backs up completely level again. So have hope. This does work, no matter how old the horse is, as long as it's sound. Which it looks like this horse is, it's just not moving very much. So once again, I would just maybe lunging a little closer to the horse with your body so you can walk with it and just encourage a little more active and a little bigger swing in the walk would be good. And the trot, of course. And this looks better. Each time we come back to this walk, it gets a little deeper and the step looks a little bit more active. A little bit better there, stepping at least up towards the track of the front foot, not quite into it yet, but at least traveling towards it. So it's certainly improving as you're going here. Now, one thing to watch is your own posture. Just remember when we're lunging, just try not to lean over. Just like when we ride, we want to keep our back straight and flatten our shoulder blades into our back and lift our chest. We want to have good posture. We want to have good posture on the ground as well, because that will help the horse understand what it is that you want. Body language has a lot to do with this. So just stretching yourself up a little bit there if you can while you're walking. We'd want to do the same thing when we're on the back of the horse. Just not letting those shoulders round over forward. Try to stretch yourself up, which is a good habit. I'm exactly the same age as you, 62 years old, so I know how hard it is to, you know, to keep ourselves in good shape as we get older, but it can be done. And of course, just like the horse, you know, doing it correctly and doing it consistently is what keeps us healthy for a long, long time. So interestingly enough, at 62 years old, you know, according to beliefs that a horse is 3 years for each human year, that makes us about the same age. So he's about 60 and you're about 60. So you should be able to relate to his aches and pains. You know, as I do, the older I get, I have more sympathy for the horses. So once again, just a little more active here would be good. And as I said, that will help you just to stretch up, try to flatten your shoulder blades into your back, get a little better posture, get a little closer to the horse. I like what you're doing and that you're keeping at the end of the line. He's just not quite getting swinging enough. So I feel like you could ask for a little bit more here, because he's actually starting, this is all starting to work quite well. He is starting to stretch into the contact here a little bit. We just have to ask for a much bigger trot. Now, it will be interesting. I know we did Karen did a saddle fit video on this horse, which you all might want to take a look at if you haven't, because there are some things that she saw in the saddle that would affect the horse adversely. And that is that thing of being too tight behind the shoulders. So it makes a big difference. If the shoulders are too tight, the saddle is too tight behind the shoulders, the horse isn't going to want to swing those shoulders. But to me, it looks like here, I just don't see you asking for much. So I think you can ask for a lot more from this horse and get a little more swing out of him. Once again, not a bad walk when he stretches down there. It's getting a little better each time as we come back. But still here, you could just encourage it to be a little bit more active. And there, once he does start to stretch down there, it would be a good idea to start giving him a little more length in those side reins. That's starting to be quite good there. There, he's really starting to release there and stretch down. This is a much better walk than what we saw earlier. Starting to improve. Yes, now that's looking much, much better. Now we can see the horse is almost tracking up into the track of the front foot, which is what we want to see, or even tracking over it. You know, so many times people don't realize how good a moving horse they have because they've never really seen it move correctly, and are often very surprised when they find they get their horses working over their backs. You know, people that thought they had horses that weren't good movers at all find that they actually are. So any horse that's hollow to start with is going to be improved immensely by doing this work. So once again, getting back to your work on the lunge line there, I'd just like to see you do get him a little more active, be a little more active yourself in getting the horse to move, and see if we can't get that swing a little better. Mounted work here, starting off pretty good actually. Considering how short the horse's walk was on the lunge line, this is actually almost even a little better here when you're on the horse. So that tells me, I think, once again, that there's more that you can ask for on the lunge line there if you would just ask him to be a little more active. So that step is not too bad. You can see that as it got a little bigger there, he started to come up with the pole a little bit, and we want to see him stretching on down, which is what you're getting here. Not a bad leg yield there, leading to a little more activity. I like how you're keeping your hands wide there and just letting the horse maintain contact. That's the thing to do. Now, in the saddle itself, I would like to see you stretch up just like the lunge line. Actually, interestingly enough, you are stretching up here better than you were when you were lunging. So you just need to continue to stretch on up. You know, I highly recommend yoga to all riders, especially as we get older. It becomes harder and harder to maintain that flexibility. So a little yoga to help you, and just try to stretch that chest up and flatten your shoulder blades into your back. But really, your position is pretty good here. And once again, your position is better mounted than it was when you were lunging. So take a look at the difference. You can flatten your shoulder blades into your back, as I see you doing right here. So that's really quite good. Do the same thing when you lunge. There, that's starting to get a little better there as he starts to stretch down. Once again, keep watching the horse's back legs as the horse stretches the neck down and forward. We see how that improves the step of the back end. Remember, that's what it's all about. You know, so many people today are riding the front ends of the horses, and they're all worried about what the head and neck is doing, and that getting the head and neck in this position with the face on the vertical and all this kind of stuff. And you know, once again, it doesn't come from the front, it comes from the back. So always just riding your horses forward from behind. You know, once again, any position of the neck that alters in the walk or the gait in a bad way is not what we want to have happen. Once again, much better walk here. It's starting to swing a little better here. This is really good work. Once again, your mounted work here, in a sense, is a little better than the work was on the lunge line, because this is exactly what we want to see on the lunge line, is just getting him a little more active. So once again, we'd like to have seen that a little bit deeper before you start the trot, but that was really not bad at all. It's starting to happen in the right direction. And once again, I love how you're just keeping your hands wide, trying to learn to maintain contact. So again, remember, so often today people are teaching horses to ride as if the horse is going perfectly underneath them. So they teach them to pose in these positions, but the horses are not moving correctly, so nothing works right. So we worry about equitation once we get the horse working correctly. Then we'll be able to keep our hands up and together in the correct place once we have developed correct contact with the horse. And he stretches into that contact. But this is pretty nice, and once again, I like the mounted work better than I like the work on the trot, on the lunge line rather, that the horse is a little more swinging and active. You're getting a much more active trot, something that actually looks like a trot here, whereas on the lunge line, we never quite got to that place. So I can see that you can definitely ask for more on the lunge line, sending this horse forward, because you're doing it in the mounted work and getting a pretty good job done. And once again, here he needs to stretch a little deeper into it. But I like how you're just getting the activity. The stretch will come. If you continue doing what you're doing, it will continue to get better and better. Remember, when we make our turns, keep everything wide. Remember, a corner for a horse should be a quarter of the smallest circle it can perform and stay over its back. So that means at this level, our turns are going to be very, very wide. The whole thing is the maintenance of the rhythm is what we're looking for. So anything that you do that, you know, you make such a sharp turn, the horse drops the rhythm. If you can't keep him in the same rhythm, that tells us that the turn was too sharp for the horse, and it really is not going to do him any good. If we lose the rhythm, we lose the gymnastic quality of the exercise. In other words, it doesn't have much value to the training of the horse. But once again, here you're getting the horse pretty active. I like, once again, better than it was on the lunge line. So that's a good sign and tells me that you can get much more. You know, when I first saw this horse, the way it was kind of mincing along there, I thought maybe the horse was a little footsore, but I'm not really seeing that here now that you're asking with the horse for more activity. He seems to be fine. Pretty good leg yield there. I like how you kept the shoulder in advance. He could have stepped over just a little bit more, but that was not bad at all. Certainly headed in the right direction. So don't forget to change your rising diagonal. There you forgot to change your diagonal. You're rising now on the inside diagonal instead of the outside, remember? And there you go. You changed it for us, so that's good. And once again, this is a much better rhythm than what we saw on the lunge line. He's swinging a little more active, and hopefully we can get him a little deeper here soon, which is the way you're headed. But once again, even know this, you know, the horse would be much better off if you just rode it around like this than it ever would be in a very shortened frame with its neck held in. So the good news is that while you're learning this, even if it's not perfect, you're doing better by the horse than if you were trying to hold it in some false frame, as we see so many people doing. I liked your downwards transition there. It was pretty smooth. You didn't just jam on the brakes. That's what we're looking for. Everything to be smooth. Think of the gears in a transmission of a car. That's how we want the horse to work. We have to put the body in a position that lets everything work mechanically the way nature intended. And unfortunately, that's what happens when we get on the back of a horse. Horses' backs are weak, and if they drop the back, then they're never able to work with a rider on them the way nature intended, that is, to be able to swing through their backs. Pretty good leg yield there. Once again, it could cross over a little more, but nice and wide. I like how you're keeping the shoulder in advance. That's all very, very good. Now, one thing about your fingers there, it's perfectly fine to ride with your hands wide, but do try to keep your fingers rounded around the reins, because we don't want to get in this sort of fingertip habit of riding off of our fingertips. So keep your fingers rounded around the rein. For one reason alone, is that if the horse suddenly does stop, I actually have seen people break their fingers by having their hands too open and jamming them into the horse's neck. So keep those fingers rounded around the reins and don't ride on your fingertips. Once again, as we come back to the walk, this is much better than it was before. It's starting to be swinging and more active. This is the best walk that we've seen. It's actually starting to look pretty good. And just the way you're doing this transition is just the way they should be done at this point. Not worrying too much about whether the horse stays in a perfect frame between the gaits, that is, transitions from walk to trot or trot to canter. So until the horse is consistent in a single gait, that is consistently stretching in the walk, and then you can get it consistently stretching in the trot, then we worry about whether it's staying there in between the gaits. So when we're moving a horse like this, just from transitioning from gait to gait, just ask for the trot. If he gets a little hollow, don't worry about it. Just send him on till you get the activity, because you're not going to get anything till you get the horse swinging anyway. So to stop the horse up with the reins would have absolutely no value. This is starting to look even a little better here. Once again, we're back on the wrong diagonal there a little bit, so just watch those. See how you're rising on the inside, and we want to be rising to the outside. Starting to stretch a little more. So this is a really good start for what you're doing. You're well on your way to getting there. Your approach to this has been very good today. You've really kept the horse, to simple things that the horse is capable of doing, and just work on getting that swing. Look, there you go. Now, watch the deeper he goes, how the top of that neck thickens out. That's what we're looking for. That tells us the horse is using those muscles. When we see the underside of the neck thick, that tells us the horse is just dragging itself along by the shoulders and the top line is not involved. So this is quite good. This is really getting there. It could be a little bit deeper than this, but compared to what we saw even on the lunge line, this is really good. It's starting to get deeper. He's starting to swing a little more. Really, really very good work for your first submission. And once again, a good downward transition back to walk. He didn't just slam on the brakes. You let him take his time. There was no big alteration in the stride. He just slowly came to a walk, and that was what we want to see. As I said, I would rather see a horse take 10 times around an entire arena, to make a transition rather than to stop up short. Coming back to this walk, once again, it's improved over what we saw on the lunge line, and that's a good thing. And once again, as I said, I think you can ask for this horse to do much more on the lunge line, and then he'll develop a little more, and your riding will even get easier when you get up there. But you've really done a great job here today. I know it's going to help you when you get your saddle straightened out. That will help him a great deal too. On days that you're just lunging, just for instance, you might want to just lunge until you get a better saddle. It might help him to just lunge in a surcingle, so there's nothing constricting his shoulders there, and maybe that will help you to get more active. But as I said, both your and his postures are better in the riding work, which is rare. I usually the other way around. So, it looks like there's more that you can ask for out of this horse. I like how you stretched up. Your position is better on the mounted work than it is during the lunging work. We still need to just get that neck out a little bit longer and a little bit lower. Just continue to try to work it till he's stretches down. You could see how coming through that corner there, once again, you could see the difference between when his neck is in the correct position, when he was all kind of U-neck there, coming through that corner for a moment and pulling with the shoulders. And we could see what that did to his stride, and that is it stops it up. So once again, getting that big open swinging stride is what we're always looking for. But this is much better here. As I said, keep up the good work. Now this stretch at the end, this is really starting to get good. He's starting to get this. This is the lowest we've seen him start to go here, and that's really what we want to see. Very nice there. Once again, as I said, he can still take it down a little bit deeper, but you're well on track here. You're doing a great job with him. I think that's going to work out very well for you. Keep up the good work, and I look forward to seeing your next submission. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride with our friend Carol here, who is in Kauai, Hawaii, by the way. Great work. We'll see you next time at Art to Ride. Thank you so much.